So as you know, Tom Lee loves to talk about Ethereum, but he's also talking about Bitcoin in today's video, and the outlook of this is kind of wild, and I want you guys to bear with me. I know this is an XRP channel, but I think this is going to be very interesting because if what he says turns out to be correct, I think this could be very bullish for XRP, given exactly what XRP was built for. XRP right now is $2.83. I do think we're at the bottom of this wedge, and I think if Bitcoin can continue to rise as it is as we speak, we may be on for a run. However, we did get a big push here up to 113,000, and now we're back down to 111. So maybe this is just a shakeout to get rid of the late longs, or maybe we're getting rejected here. So be careful if you are planning to trade, and let's jump into it.
Before we get to Ethereum, what is the simple bull case for Bitcoin when we're already at 111,000 price at the moment?
Well, Bitcoin has done very well over any 10-year period.
Make sure you listen in to this if you think that it's too late for you to be involved with Bitcoin or crypto, okay? I get a lot of comments saying, well, there's nothing I can do with Bitcoin because it's already X amount. Now, guys, I understand that these 100X lofty goals that people want, yes, that's not going to happen. But there is still opportunity for the long-term investor, in my opinion.
And at $100,000 today, it does reflect that institutions are beginning to view this as a legitimate way to store value. Because the Bitcoin blockchain is really one of the best ways to record financial transactions with 100% never failed censorship resistance, never fraudulent entry in its entire operation. So, but institutions, only about 5% actually own any Bitcoin, but 95% of Bitcoin has already been mined. It's a fixed supply. That's a stat from Bitwise. But that 5% that isn't held yet, because the other Bitcoin is basically being hodled, has to be acquired by those 95% of institutions. Plus now governments want to own Bitcoin as a strategic reserve. So if you think about how difficult it is going to be to acquire that last 5%, I can see why it would replace gold or equal the network value of gold, which is over 22 trillion, and that would put Bitcoin at around 1.2 million per Bitcoin.
So obviously that's a bull case, but over $1 million. And that might sound crazy. And a lot of people say, well, Tom Lee's got these crazy bull cases. They're always nuts predictions. But that's actually lower than the likes of, for example, Michael Saylor. I've seen Michael Saylor talk about over $30 million in person. That's what I've seen in person for his bull case. So over $1 million. Right now, Bitcoin sits at what? Just over 100K, right? 113,000 at the time of recording this video. So that's a 10X from here. Now, if we calculate the average gain for example, the S&P 500, which is about a 10% gain per year, you can start to see why even institutions are still very interested. And Bitcoin could still 10X your money, according to Tom Lee, which is an amazing return. So is it really too late? Or are we maybe thinking about this wrong? I'm asking you to let me know what you think.
Today, I mean, people sometimes use the phrase market cap, but so the total value of all Bitcoin out there is what, 2 trillion. Talk me through, I mean, obviously the limited supply argument, I think pretty much everyone gets in a sort of fiat currency world. In the short term, if the president continues to interfere with the Fed, is that a short-term catalyst, or are these strategic long-term arguments for Bitcoin what really matters?
In the short term, it's probably unclear if it helps or hurts Bitcoin, because Bitcoin also is correlated with global monetary liquidity. Raoul Pal at Real Vision put up this chart years ago that shows M2 versus Bitcoin, and it's been almost dead on at all the bottoms and tops. Once we would be through Fed interference and the Fed is easing, of course, that's good for Bitcoin. But in this period of risk off, I would say it would hurt stocks.
And by the way, guys, what he's talking about is the Fed reducing interest rates, easing, letting more liquidity flow. And we've actually just had news. If we go to my Twitter, August US non-farm payroll data, actual 22,000, expected 75,000. 1,000, previous 79,000. This is a huge miss. Now, remember what we were talking about before, right? Good news is bad news is good news. And this is the perfect example of this. This is actually bad news. All right. This isn't great for the economy and the actual data. However, because it's not great, meaning the economy is not in a great position, that means that there is now a 99% chance that the Fed will cut rates in September.
What is the case for Ethereum then over Bitcoin?
Well, Ethereum differs from Bitcoin. Actually, Ethereum was initially a fork of Bitcoin, by the way, but with an added feature, which is smart contracts. So what they wanted to do on Ethereum was to say, let's use blockchain technology not just to store value, but now to store information. Ethereum is as a smart contract platform, actually also has something called the EVM, Ethereum Virtual Machine. So you can run entire programs and conditional contracts on Ethereum. And Ethereum itself is 100% reliable. It has not had a single moment of downtime since inception. It's one of the few blockchains that has never been down.
See, so that's another really important thing, right? For anyone who's new to the market or have maybe forgotten this, yes, there's loads of Ethereum competitors. Yes, Ethereum is slow in comparison to the likes of Solana, but it's also expensive, but it has never been down. And that is the key, right? That is why Tom Lee has only recently turned his eyes. Well, I'm putting words in his mouth, but could be one of the reasons why things have taken a while, because they wanted to make sure that it didn't have downtime like a lot of other cryptocurrencies. And also that news or that information makes it very interesting to the likes of institutions. Another argument that I heard was that, well, Conor, these institutions aren't going to be building on Ethereum. They're going to be building on EVM sidechains. But EVM, Ethereum Virtual Machine, which is something he mentioned, is still Ethereum. These chains still benefit Ethereum. They still bring fees to Ethereum. Okay, so remember that when you think maybe there's no use case for Ethereum, it's too expensive, it's clunky, it's slow, there's other sides to those coins.
And then if you needed to do more things on Ethereum, you can build what they call layer 2s on top of it. So Ethereum is essentially infrastructure that now is catching the attention of two industries. The first is the financial sector. The stable coins became really viral, a breakaway product for crypto. And that's like the ChatGPT moment. You know, there's $250 billion worth of stable coins. The vast majority of those are minted on Ethereum. Then the Genius Act was passed by this administration and this Congress, and that greenlighted the proliferation of stablecoins onto the blockchain. So banks are now building stablecoin products. That Treasury Secretary Besant thinks that could get to $4 trillion. That's exponential growth, burning gas on Ethereum. And then we have Project Crypto, which is the SEC building, wanting Wall Street to build on the blockchain. Now, all of that collectively, from a Wall Street perspective, is like 1971 for the dollar. And what I mean by that is, in 1971, the dollar went off the gold standard. So in 1971, the dollar became synthetic. And gold was what people bought as a hedge against that synthetic dollar. So you had gold as the trade, and that would be the Bitcoin equivalent. But actually, the synthetic dollar is what created the rails for Wall Street to build all their future products. The futures, curves, derivatives were all because the dollar was a synthetic product. If the dollar was backed by gold, Wall Street would be still a very small business. Well, Wall Street now is going to be building its entire infrastructure onto the blockchain. And the blockchain they're choosing is Ethereum.
Ethereum and also the Ethereum sidechains, which is very important, right? It's happening on Ethereum. So it's absolutely massive, guys. And like he's saying, this could be a complete change to what we've seen already. So hopefully that was as exciting for you as it was for me. As you heard from him, he reckons Bitcoin can go over $1 million, and stable coins are the future, right? Stable coins are the future of Ethereum. Now, as we know, XRP has its own stable coin. And if Bitcoin can continue to rally over $1 million, that's going to be a lot of liquidity that exists in this market that could flow into the altcoins. Of course, right now we are getting closer and closer to an altcoin season. But as you know, I believe that Bitcoin is the one that's going to dictate where we go next. So all eyes on if Bitcoin can now break 113,300. If not, it's likely we go lower, but my first line of support now will be 109,300. So I'm watching that closely, and I'll keep you guys up to date with everything that happens, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.